Alright, so what I'm looking at today is finding missing dimensions. So missing sides, missing heights, missing radiuses in cuboids and in cylinders. Okay, so a really common thing we're asked to do in maths is once we learn how to use a formula to get the volume of a cuboid or use a formula to get the volume of a cylinder, they will then give us questions where we have the answer, we have the volume of the cylinder, we have the volume of the cuboid, and we need to work back to something like the height or like the radius. Okay, so we need to use a little bit of algebra to solve something that's missing, a missing dimension from the shape. Okay, so I'll work through 4 examples here. First one over here, I've got a cuboid and I've got sides of 20 and 12, and I've usually got a height marked in here, but I don't in this question. Okay, they tell me that the volume is 2,640 and they want me to figure out the height. Okay, so the starting point would be just like when we're trying to calculate the volume. We write down the formula. Okay, so volume is equal to, for this sort of shape here, is length by width by height. Okay, so for this shape here, it is 20 multiplied by 12 multiplied by the height. I don't know, but I do know that when I multiply these 3 numbers together, I get the volume, and the volume is 2640. So I've only got one thing that I don't know, and once I've only got one unknown, I'm able to solve it. All right. So let's multiply together on the left hand side what I can multiply together. So 20 multiplied by 12, and that's 240. So 240 multiplied by the height is equal to 2640. Okay, now I want to get the height. Okay, so I want the height to be on its own. My answer here is going to be height equals something. So I need to move the multiplied by 240. Okay, so I've got height multiplied by 240 is 2640. So I'm going to move the multiplied by 240 over to the other side. When you move that over the equal side, you do the opposite with it. So what's the opposite of multiplying? It's dividing. So your next line is height is equal to 2640 divided by 240. Or another way of thinking about that step that I'm making is, on the left hand side I have height multiplied by 240. So to get rid of that multiplied by 240 that I don't want to be there, I divide by 240. Because if you multiply and divide by 240, they cancel. Okay, so dividing that side by 240 gets rid of that. But if you divide the left hand side by 240, you need to do the same thing to the right hand side. And that's what I've got here. So I've got the height is equal to 2640 divided by 240. I'm just writing my divided as a fraction like that rather than using the divided by symbol. That's kind of more common. You'll see that a lot more in examples and in books and stuff like that. So 2640 divided by 240 is 11. So my height is equal to 11 centimeters. And that's what I was asked to figure out. Okay, so the missing height. All right, looking at the diagram, 11 looks just reasonable. It's maybe not exactly to scale on the diagram that I have, but it's in the same ballpark as these numbers. Like I wouldn't expect an answer of 1,000 centimeters if it was 20 by 12. Maybe just do that quick common sense check on your answer, that you're not getting like a massive number or a really, really small number, but 11 would seem to make sense to me there. Next one is a similar example, you just don't give me a diagram. So a cuboid has a length of 10, width of 5, and a volume of 800. Find its height. Okay, so it's the same situation that I've got here. I'm missing the height. Okay, you can draw a diagram if you want, if it helps you. What I would say about exam questions is they do generally give you the diagram, but you could be expected to deal with something like this where you're not given a diagram. But it's a cuboid, and I'm looking to get its volume. So I know the formula is volume equals length by width by height. Length is 10, so 10 multiplied by width is 5 multiplied by height, h, and that's equal to 800, I'm told in the question. Okay, it happens to be height I'm looking for in both of these examples, but if I was looking for length, or if I was looking for width, or if I was looking for breadth, which people call width sometimes, or depth, it's the exact same way to solve it. Okay, so with a cuboid, doesn't matter which dimension you're looking at, you'll be using the exact same method. So over here then, 10 multiplied by 5 is 50. So I've got 50 multiplied by h. So sometimes you'll see that just written as 50h without the multiplied by sign. So 50h is equal to 800. So again, to get rid of this 50 here, I'm going to divide both sides by 50. Okay, 50h divided by 50 is h, and then 800 divided by 50 on the other side. The other way of thinking about that, as I said, is you've got h multiplied by 50. If you bring multiplied by 50 over an equal sign, it becomes divided by. Okay, however you think of that step is fine, as long as you're getting the correct result. 800 divided by 50 then is 16. So my height here is 16 centimeters. All right, so just on to two examples with cylinders. These will be ever so slightly different because I'm looking for different things in both. So first one here, the volume of this cylinder is 43,750 pi centimeters cubed. Okay, so it's given in terms of pi. I think one of the examples I did in the volume of a cylinder video, I left the answer like that. So you leave the pi in your answer. That's going to make this example easier. So they tend to give them like this when you're asked to do them for a cylinder, and I'll go through why in a second. The radius is 25 centimeters. That's marked in the diagram as well. Find the height. Okay, so again, if it's volume of a cylinder they give you in the question, then it's the volume of a cylinder formula that you should be using. So on page 10 of the log tables there, you have got volume equals pi r squared h. So that's the first thing I write. Volume equals pi r squared h. Okay. I'm not going to sub anything in for pi, and I'll go through why in a second. So pi multiplied by the radius squared, so multiplied by 25 squared, multiplied by the height is what I don't know in this example, so multiplied by h, and that's equal to, so I'm given the volume here, I know the answer to this is going to be 43,750 pi. Now, I've got to multiply by pi on both sides. So what I can do here is divide both sides by pi, and the pi's cancel, so you don't need to worry about them then. Okay, so that's why they give you these questions in terms of pi, these answers in terms of pi, because it means you can just cancel the pi from the formula with the 1 over here. So when you have a pi on both sides like that, you can divide both sides by pi and they cancel them. Now, left hand side I've got 25 squared, so that's 25 squared equals 625. So 625 multiplied by the height is equal to 43,750. So let's divide both sides by 625. Left hand side divided by 625 just gives you h. 43,750 divided by 625 then. So 43,750 divided by 625 is 70. So the height of this thing is 70 centimeters, and always give units in these answers. Okay, so the volume is in centimeters cubed, the radius is in centimeters, so your height is going to be in centimeters as well. All right, so slightly trickier, I think, than dealing with the cuboid one, but the same method essentially. All right, just once you get used to dealing with cancelling the pi's there. Over here then, just looking for the radius, it's going to be the same as this with just one extra little step to it that I need to go through. But again, it's a cylinder. I'm given the volume, I'm given the height, I want the radius. So I'm given the volume of a cylinder, so I use the volume of a cylinder formula. So volume equals pi r squared h. So again, you'll see here I'm given the volume in terms of pi with a pi in it. So there's no need to sub like 3.14 or anything in here. I'm going to be able to cancel the pi's. So pi multiplied by radius squared. So that's what I'm looking for. So I don't know or. So it's multiplied by or squared multiplied by the height is 80. And that's equal to the volume. So equal to 32,000 pi. So you have 32,000 multiplied by pi on the right hand side. You've got all this multiplied by pi on the left hand side. So divide both sides by pi and your pi's cancel. Now I've got or squared multiplied by 80. So you can write it like that. Another way you'll see that written a lot is 80 or squared equals 32,000. So this, when it's a kind of number up against a letter like this, that just means multiplied by, okay, so don't forget that. I want to get the or squared on its own, so I'm trying to solve for the radius, so I want to end up with just or equals something. So let's move the multiplied by 80 over the equal sign. If you move a multiplied by 80, it becomes divided by 80. So or squared is equal to 32,000 divided by 80. So let's do that. 32,000 divided by 80 is 400. So or squared is equal to 400. If you know or squared and you want or, okay, it's the square root function that you use, okay? So if you have or squared equals 400, then the way to just get or is square root. All right, so if or squared equals 400, then or is the square root of 400. So square root 400 equals 20. So the radius there is 20 centimeters. All right, so that's finding missing dimensions given the volume of shapes. Okay, so you write down whatever the formula is, so length by width by height, or pi or squared h, depending on what shape it is. You put it equal to the volume you're given in the question, and then you'll be bringing stuff over and dividing. Okay, so just a little bit of algebra to finish these off. All right.